What do you see? Thousands of men going to confession. Love is more important than anything. But it's love and truth have to go together. If I just come up here and tickle your ears and don't tell you the truth, I'm going to hell. But we got to speak truth, but we got to be loving when we do it. We got to make sure we want the other people. I hope, you're finally getting close to what it is to be like Jesus, is when you hope and pray that the people or the person you can't stand the most on all the earth gets to sit next to you forever in heaven. Now you know you're on the right road. My mother once looked at me and says, Larry, if that person's in heaven, I don't want to go there. I said, don't worry, mother, you won't. To my own mother. It's a terrible reality. My mother. But it's the truth. Mom, you better learn to love everybody. We better learn to have forgiving hearts. We better learn that we want everyone to be saved. Years ago I sat there and Tim McVeigh, remember Tim? He blew up the Oklahoma. He was confirmed by my bishop, Bishop Troutman. He was to be in Buffalo. He was a Catholic. So one night in the middle of the night, I got a call. I woke up in the middle of the night, the Lord hit me in the head. And he says, I want you to write a letter to Tim McVeigh and give him mercy. I said, I will not. And I'm literally in the middle of the night. I said, no, and I'm sitting there trying to bow back. And so after a half hour, okay. So I wrote up and I wrote the letter to McVeigh, and I says, Mr. McVeigh, sorry for writing you. My bishop ordained you and confirmed you, I says, you're dying, and I believe this before the Holy Father at that time come out and says, seamless garment. I says, I believe you should die for the people you killed. But if you go, you're a Catholic, so I'd encourage you to go to confession, and you could become Saint Tim McVeigh and live and see the face of God forever. And then I went back to sleep and sent the thing off. Well, he went and got executed and everything else. Well, I used to be with the SVDs, the Divine Word Missionaries. And while I was there was two black twins that were there with me, the Smith brothers. They got ordained too. Well, then about a year later, I sat there, forgot all about it, but a year later I was reading the paper, and Tim McVeigh, the night before he died, called Father Smith, who was the SVD, and the morning he died, Tim McVeigh went to confession. Tim McVeigh could be a saint, but he was a mass murderer. Are we people that want everyone to be saved? Or are we righteous? Because people of God, you did the same thing Tim McVeigh did, and you do it every day. Every time you and I sin, we kill Jesus Christ. It says in the Word of God, the good man falls 7 times a day. I'm not a good man, I fall more. And yet never the God of the universe looks at me, and after I come in, I say, Father, I'm so sorry I killed your son today. Again. Never once has he said, Larry, I'm sick of you. Every day you kill my son. And every night you ask me to forgive you. Every night. Never once has he done that. So how can we be anything else than merciful to everybody else? The main thing that love is about mercy. So I got to be a person of mercy, a person of love. I got to tell the people I love that I love them. Years ago, here I am, and one of my first kids, when I was newly ordained with the youth group, and we'd take the people out, we'd go out for pizza and wings. I don't do any of that stuff anymore, huh? But when I was young, I used to love to sit there and work with high school kids. And so one of the kids, he was in college at the time, and he calls me and said, let's go out for pizza. And I said, okay. And I'm typing in a typewriter. Remember those things? And I'm typing at the typewriter. And as I'm typing at the typewriter, this big kid who became a professional football player, he played for Detroit. That's all I'll tell you, but it was 20-some years ago. And as I'm typing at the typewriter, he got real quiet. He was a big talker, and I turned around and I go, what? And this big kid started to shake uncontrollably. And he started to sob uncontrollably. And I was like, I can't take tears, especially from men. I said, please, 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 whatever you want, just shh. What's the matter? What's the matter? Never forget this man looked at me, and he looked at me and he says, Father, I'd do anything if my dad just told me once that he loved me. That the only thing this kid ever wanted was for his dad to tell him that he loved him. That's all he wanted. Huh? Now, about 10 years ago, this kid who's now 42 years old, he served my first Mass, and he has his own kids. I'm his godfather, was his son. He called me about 10 years ago, maybe 12 now, and he says, Father, my dad's dying. Can you come over and anoint him? And I said, oh, sure. I went over to his house. I anointed his father, and later on that day, his father died. Not because I anointed him. It was his time. Anyway, so as his father died after the funeral, I sat there and I says to him, I said, so-and-so, did your dad ever tell you that he loved you? And this 32-year-old man again started to shake and again started to sob. He said, never, Father. The only thing this kid ever wanted from his dad was for his dad to tell him that he loved him. Now, his dad showed him, His dad was always football games. He played soccer in high school. It was all the soccer games. He was a kicker at Pitt. He was all of the games. His dad was always there. But the only thing this kid wanted was for his dad to open his mouth and tell him that he loved him, that he was proud of him, Growing up, I grew up in the city of Pittsburgh, like I told you. Both my parents were police officers. You ever sit there and wonder, like, what type of holy priests or what type of priests people families priests come from? I'm sure your bishop and his brother come from a very, very holy family. But if you ever sit there and you ever think about me, about what kind of family I come from, have you ever seen Roseanne on TV? Oh, my family's much worse. Much worse. Both of my parents were police officers in the city of Pittsburgh Police. My mother graduated highest ever from anybody who ever went to the police academy. And my father was a canine man, and we had a shepherd, So my family was very, very earthy type people. That's the way I am. Very earthy. I used to have the priests in seminary say, Larry, when we meet your family, we understand you more and more. You know, Pittsburghers, we are who we are. We say what we say. We bring it out as it is, okay? So I got to know a lot of police officers, and being a police officer is not an easy job. Every time you get a call, it's for something bad. And so it's a hard life. If some of your police officers, you know it. And so some of them, as especially police officers, as I've been dealing with them throughout the years, some of them to deal with the pain, to know the anger and pain inside, they drink and become bad alcoholics. I knew one who became a humongously bad alcoholic. So after almost 20 years in the police force, he left the Pittsburgh police force, and he moved out, left his wife, left his kids, and he moved out to Las Vegas with a new wife and new kids, because we all know everybody's happy in Las Vegas. Did you know that? Yeah, and so he got to be head of security of Circus, one of the largest, in that time, Circus is nothing now, but this is almost 30 years ago, he became head of security. He got a new wife, the new kids, and he drove a big blue Cadillac. Nowadays, Cadillacs don't mean anything. You need your Lexus, right? But in those days, you had a Cadillac, you arrived. But he kept drinking and drinking and drinking. So after a few years in Las Vegas, he moved to Houston, Texas, because you do realize everybody's happy in Houston, Texas. Did you know that? I was just there a couple weeks ago. Not true. But anyway, so he was there in Houston, but he kept drinking and drinking and drinking. He became head of security, one of the largest hospitals in the nation, in a suburb called Katy. But he kept drinking and drinking. He was so empty inside. And so this man at 44 years old, which is a baby, is it not? Baby, 44, I'm going to be 52 next month. Holy crap. But the reality was this baby sat there, and his wife, I was a senior in college seminary at the time, his wife called me on the phone and said, Larry, I know you're busy, but he's dying. Can you come out here and be with him? And I said, sure, that's what I do. I'm a seminarian. Yes! And I got in a plane, and I flew out to Houston, Texas. When I walked into the room, I was not prepared for what I saw. Here was this man, 44 years old, only a couple days away from his 45th birthday. He was laying there in the room, and he looked like he was 99. He had pure white hair, he had no fat in his body, he was a human skeleton. He literally looked like he was 99 years old, dying of AIDS. He looked horrible, and he couldn't talk to me. He was on a respirator. So I come walk in the room, I see him laying there, and we're the only two in the room, and I go, you look like hell, I have a negative humor if you haven't been able to figure this out yet. And he shook his head up and down, but he couldn't talk to me. He had to write to me on a blackboard. And he's spending time writing to me, and I'm spending time with this man for a week, me trying to talk to him writing back to me on a blackboard. I'll never forget the last time I was with him. I was, like I said, a senior in college. This was in September of that year. And as he's laying there, I said, hey, listen, I'm going to be graduating from college in May. You know, boy, it'd be great if you could be there. And he shook his head up and down, but we both knew this wasn't going to happen. This man was going to die. I said, okay, listen, I got to go, but I'll pray for you. Doesn't that sound holy? Oh, I'll pray for you. Sometimes we priests and seminarians can sound so holy. And I start walking out of the room. As I start walking out of the room, I knew it'd be the last time I ever saw this man. So I had to get one last look at him. So I turn around, and there's this man to get one last look, and he's desperately calling me back with his arms. But he couldn't say anything to me. He's just calling me back like this. And I ran around the other side of the bed, and I go, what's the matter? What's the matter? What's the matter? Thinking something's terribly wrong. And he grabs me with what strength he had left, and he hugged me, and he starts squeezing me so tight and hugging me so tight to himself. And as he's doing this, again, 29 years ago, and it feels like it was 2 seconds ago, as he's holding me so tight to himself, I look up and I go, yeah, I love you too, Dad. And a little later, my dad died. The only time I ever told my dad that I loved him was on his deathbed. Why? Because he wasn't the type of dad I wanted. He was an alcoholic, and he was a mean alcoholic. And I spent my whole life judging my father instead of loving my father. How about you? Huh?